Hey man, there's a strange, quiet tension that exists between a man and a woman after the emotions have settled, after she's pulled away, after you've gone silent, after all the words that could have been said have already been left unsaid. She won't text you first, not because she doesn't want to, but because she can't. There's a battle happening inside her, between pride and desire, between her heart and her ego. She checks her phone more times than she'll ever admit, wondering if you've reached out, wondering if you still care. But every time her finger hovers over your name, that inner voice whispers, "Don't do it, let him reach out first." It's not that she's moved on, it's that she's terrified of being the one who looks weaker. And that's the paradox of modern attraction. She wants you desperately, but she's equally desperate to appear like she doesn't. You have to understand, texting you first would mean surrendering control. It would mean admitting that she feels something she's been trying to hide, something she's been denying even to herself. And for many women, that loss of control is unbearable. She's been conditioned to believe that vulnerability equals power loss. So even when her emotions scream for you, she'll silence them behind calculated distance. She'll post something online that subtly hints at her feelings, hoping you'll take the bait. She'll watch your stories within seconds, then pretend she didn't care enough to reply. She'll linger in your orbit without ever making contact, because in her mind, presence without pursuit keeps her pride intact. But deep down, she's waiting for your name to light up her screen, for that message that will give her permission to stop pretending. When a woman truly wants to text you, but doesn't, her actions begin to betray her silence. She'll bring you up in casual conversations, mentioning you to friends under the disguise of indifference. She'll replay old chats, scrolling through the digital echoes of what once was. Late at night, when no one's watching, she'll open the chat window, not to send a message, but to feel you again. That's the hidden truth about female psychology. When emotion is real, distance becomes a form of self-punishment. She's not ignoring you because she doesn't care. She's ignoring you because caring hurts. Every unsent message becomes a small battle lost to her ego. Every day she stays silent, she's trying to convince herself that she's in control. But that illusion starts to crumble the longer your silence stretches. You see, the moment you stop chasing her, the moment you stop being predictable, is the moment her world begins to shift. Because up until then, she was certain that no matter what she said or did, you'd always come back. That your emotions were anchored to her validation. But when you don't reach out, when you match her silence with composure, that certainty collapses. She starts questioning everything. Did he finally move on? Is he talking to someone else? Was he never as attached as I thought? Those questions don't come from logic, they come from emotional dissonance, because for the first time she's realizing that she might not have the power she thought she did. And nothing terrifies a woman more than losing emotional control over a man she once believed she could predict. But here's where it gets deeper. Women don't just crave attention, they crave emotional influence. When a man reacts, she feels powerful. When he doesn't, she feels lost. And that's why your silence speaks louder than any message could. Every day that you don't text her, every hour that passes without your attention, her imagination does the work for you. She'll start over-analyzing everything. Your last words, her last message, even her own behavior. She'll rewrite the story in her head 1,000 times, trying to make sense of how she lost your focus. The truth is, your silence has now become her obsession. Not because you're playing games, but because you've done something rare. You've made her feel the absence of her own importance. And that's a feeling her ego isn't built to handle. At first, she'll try to numb that discomfort with distractions. She'll post more, go out more, maybe even flirt with others, not out of genuine interest, but as a coping mechanism. It's all part of her silent protest, her way of saying, "See, I don't need you." But every attempt at pretending only deepens the void, because while she's performing indifference, she's constantly aware of what's missing, the peace she felt when your attention was hers. That's the cruel irony of detachment. It forces her to feel the emotions she thought she could escape. Every like, every comment, every late night party becomes a temporary high that fades the moment she's alone again. And when the mask slips, she's left with the truth she's been avoiding. She misses you more than she's willing to admit. The longer you stay silent, the more her pride turns into confusion. She'll start to wonder if maybe she misread everything, if maybe you were never as emotionally invested as she believed. That doubt eats at her. because women derive a large part of their confidence from how desired they feel. And when the one man who once made her feel special now treats her like she doesn't exist, it creates a wound to her self-image. She starts to question herself. Was I not enough? Did he get over me that easily? That's when the emotional reversal begins. The power she once had starts to crumble, and the man she thought was replaceable becomes unforgettable. You see, detachment doesn't push women away, it makes them see themselves. It strips away the illusion of control and forces them to confront the truth. They miss what they took for granted. And here's the paradox. The moment she starts feeling that loss, her mind begins to justify her silence even more. She'll tell herself that texting first would be too desperate, that if he wanted to talk, he would. It's a defense mechanism, a psychological wall she builds to protect her ego from collapse. But even as she says it, her emotions betray her logic. She still checks your profile, she still reads old messages, she still imagines how it would feel if you suddenly reached out. Because the emotional mind doesn't care about logic, it only responds to feeling. And the feeling of being ignored by someone she desires is unbearable. She won't admit it out loud, but every second of your silence is rewiring how she sees you. You're no longer the predictable man who chases. You're the one she now feels compelled to chase. You might be wondering why she doesn't just give in and text you. The answer is simple. Fear of rejection, fear of humiliation, fear of losing control. In her mind, the idea of texting you and getting no reply is far worse than sitting in silence, wondering what you're thinking. So she chooses the illusion of control over the risk of vulnerability. But that illusion can't last forever, because silence, when stretched long enough, becomes unbearable. It turns curiosity into longing, longing into anxiety, and anxiety into regret. And that regret grows louder each day you stay silent. Eventually, she won't just miss you. She'll start to resent herself for losing someone who had the strength to walk away first. What she doesn't realize is that by refusing to text you, she's only feeding the cycle of her own desire. Every unsent message, every unspoken word, every delayed response, it all amplifies her emotional attachment. Because when something is withheld, the human mind begins to crave it even more. You've become a psychological trigger, the one who gives her nothing, yet consumes her thoughts entirely. And the most beautiful part, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to chase, prove, or plead. You simply chose silence, and in doing so, you shifted the balance of power without a single word. That's the beauty of masculine detachment. It doesn't scream for attention, it silently commands it. As time drags on, her silence starts to feel heavier than she expected. What once felt like control now feels like a cage she built for herself. Every notification makes her heart jump, but it's never your name. She keeps telling herself that she's fine, that she doesn't care, but her body betrays her. The same dopamine rush she used to get from your attention is now replaced by restless anxiety. She scrolls through her camera roll, finding photos that remind her of moments she swore she'd forgotten. She wonders if you've deleted the pictures too, if you've stopped thinking about her. If she ever really mattered. She replays your last interaction, dissecting every word, every pause, every tone, looking for proof that maybe you still feel something. But what she doesn't understand yet is that silence itself is your answer. She'll start rationalizing her emotions in strange ways. Maybe she'll convince herself that you're just busy. Maybe she'll tell herself you're being immature by not reaching out. Anything to protect her from facing the truth. You're not reacting the way she expected. She'll try to flip the story in her head, from he's ignoring me to he's trying to make me chase him. That mental gymnastics isn't just denial, it's defense. Because if she admits that your silence comes from peace and not from strategy, it means she's lost her emotional hold on you completely. And for a woman who once fed on your attention, that's unbearable. So she starts convincing herself that she's still the one in control, all while obsessing over whether you've moved on. The irony? The more she tries to prove to herself that she's over you, the deeper she falls into missing you. You'll notice this shift in small ways. The sudden story views after weeks of silence, the posts that feel oddly directed at you, the reappearance of old photos, the subtle attempt to remind you that she's still around. That's her pride trying to reconnect without actually reaching out. She wants you to take the hint, to break the silence first, to relieve her from the tension she created. But when you don't bite, that tension turns into torment. She'll check if you've seen her story, hoping it triggers something. But every time she realizes you didn't, the ache in her chest grows, because now she's not just missing you, she's craving validation from you. And that's the moment your silence wins. You flip the script completely. The same woman who once made you feel replaceable now wakes up wondering if she's the one who's been replaced. You have to understand something powerful here. Your silence creates a space that words never could. It's a void that reflects her own actions back at her. She wanted control, and now she has it, but it doesn't feel how she imagined. Control without connection is hollow. She thought making you chase would make her feel desired. Instead, it made her feel distant, because a man who doesn't chase, who doesn't need validation, represents something most women rarely experience: emotional power that doesn't beg. You've shown her that love without attachment is the ultimate strength. And while she might never admit it aloud, that's the very energy she's been craving all along. A man who can care deeply, but never lose himself in caring. Meanwhile, your absence begins to take on a life of its own. Every song, every place, every random moment starts to remind her of you. It's not the big memories that haunt her, it's the small ones. The way you laughed at something silly, the quiet way you listened, the way your calm energy made her nervous because she couldn't quite read what you were thinking. Those little things linger, and that's what women never expect, that the emotional imprint of a man isn't left in grand gestures, but in consistency. You didn't just exist in her world, you became a rhythm in her mind. Now that rhythm is gone, and the silence in its place feels deafening. She'll try to fill it with others, but it won't work, because no one else carries your energy, detached, centered, rare. The real struggle begins when she realizes she's trapped in her own waiting game. She's waiting for you to break first, to give her that familiar hit of validation, but deep down she knows you won't. You've moved differently this time. You've stopped reacting. You've stopped explaining. You've stopped doing everything that kept her ego alive. That unpredictability eats at her. She thought she could handle the silence, but now it's consuming her. She starts wondering if you've already moved on, if another woman has your attention now, if you've already forgotten how she used to make you feel. And the more she imagines you giving that calm energy to someone else, the more unbearable her silence becomes. That's the cruel part about detachment. It doesn't destroy her, it makes her destroy herself. At this stage, her mind and emotions go to war. Her logic tells her not to text, to stay strong, to keep her pride. But her emotions, they're screaming your name. Late at night, when the world quiets down, she scrolls through your chat window. Her thumb hovers over the keyboard. She types something small like "hey," then deletes it. She writes a longer message, something more vulnerable, then erases that too. Because she can't decide which hurts more, staying silent or being ignored. So she chooses to suffer in silence. But every time she deletes that message, her emotional wall weakens, and eventually, silence becomes too heavy for even her pride to carry. That's when you'll see subtle signs of her cracking. Maybe she likes an old post. Maybe she sends a meme that reminded her of you. Maybe she replies to your story with something meaningless, a soft opening disguised as a joke. It's her way of testing the waters, trying to see if the door is still open. But what she's really doing is surrendering control. The silence that was once her weapon has turned into her weakness. She can't stand it anymore. She needs to know where she stands with you. And the irony? The man she used to take for granted now holds the power she fought so hard to keep. You've become the emotional prize, not because you chased, but because you stopped caring. When she finally reaches out, it won't come with honesty. It'll come masked, casual, playful, as if nothing happened. She might say, "Hey stranger," or "I saw something that reminded me of you." But beneath that calm surface lies a storm of emotions. She's terrified of rejection, terrified that the silence she built might have cost her everything. She'll be scanning your reply for signs, warmth, indifference, interest, anything that gives her a clue about how you feel. But this time, the dynamic is different. Because you've learned to respond from composure, not emotion, you no longer need to prove anything, and that calmness, that quiet power, will shake her to her core. Because now, you're not reacting like the man she left, you're responding like the man she could never replace. And when you don't jump back into her energy, when you match her calm tone instead of chasing, that's when the final realization hits her. She lost you. Not because you stopped loving her, but because you outgrew needing her validation. That's the wound no woman recovers from easily. Because it's not rejection that breaks her, it's indifference. The idea that she no longer has emotional control over the man who once adored her. So she'll text you, she'll act like she's fine, she'll even pretend she moved on, but deep down, she'll be carrying a silent truth she can't speak. She wanted to reach out long before she did, but her pride made her wait too long. And by the time she finally acted, the man she missed had already become someone she could only remember. Once she finally sends that message, the emotional floodgates open, not in the way she imagined, but in the way reality forces her to feel. The moment she presses send, her heart starts racing. She rereads the message multiple times, analyzing every word, wondering if she sounded too eager or too distant. She starts checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for the 3 dots, for your name to light up the screen. But when you don't respond immediately, that's when panic sets in. All the fake confidence, all the pride, all the cold detachment she spent weeks perfecting, it all collapses in seconds, because now she's not the one being chased, she's the one waiting, and that reversal hits harder than she could have ever prepared for. You've become the emotional center she once thought she could live without, and she's realizing, with painful clarity, that she's no longer in control of how she feels. Your silence now means more to her than her own words. She'll try to distract herself from the tension. She'll put her phone face down, pretend she doesn't care, go about her day, as if she didn't just pour her ego into that message, but deep down, she's unraveling. Every minute feels longer, every hour feels heavier, and when you finally reply, calmly, briefly, without excitement, something inside her breaks in the quietest way. She was hoping for warmth, familiarity, the man who used to light up when she texted. Instead, she's met with composure. You're polite but detached, kind but unmoved. You don't mirror her emotions, and that's what shakes her, because that calmness tells her everything she didn't want to face. You've changed. You're no longer emotionally available in the way she remembers. You've stopped seeking her energy, and now she's chasing yours. What she doesn't realize is that your calm response isn't meant to punish her. It's simply a reflection of growth. You no longer need to prove you're over her. Your silence already did that. That single moment of emotional imbalance, when she realizes you're not reacting like before, triggers something profound inside her. She starts reminiscing about the times when you text her first, when your replies were long and full of warmth, when you cared about how she felt. Now, your words feel measured, concise, and grounded. That contrast between who you were and who you've become sends a subtle shock through her system, because she remembers the version of you that she thought would always be there. The man who once fought for her, who once explained himself, who once waited, but now, that man is gone. He's been replaced by a version that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't need closure. And the strangest part, that version is infinitely more attractive, not because you're trying to impress her, but because you've mastered what most men never do, emotional detachment without resentment. That's the power she can't compete with, because it's not about dominance, it's about peace. As time goes on, your calmness begins to haunt her more than your silence ever did. She expected anger, confrontation, maybe even indifference, but what she didn't expect was grace. You didn't hold grudges, you didn't accuse, you didn't feed into her emotional games. And that makes her realize that you're operating from a higher state of being. You're not emotionally available in a way she can manipulate anymore. You're emotionally disciplined. You've stopped viewing her as the center of your emotional world and started treating her like just another person in it. And for a woman who once thrived on emotional control, that's terrifying, because it means the power has shifted permanently. You're no longer living in her narrative, she's living in yours. Every small act of restraint from you, a late reply, a calm tone, an unread message, feels like poetic justice for all the times she took your presence for granted. You've become the quiet reminder that peace always wins over passion when maturity enters the room. The irony of it all is that by the time she truly understands what she lost, it's no longer something she can have. She'll replay your entire connection in her mind, trying to pinpoint the exact moment she pushed you too far, the day her pride cost her something real. She'll imagine how different things could have been if she just swallowed her ego and texted you first when she still had the chance. But life doesn't grant rewinds for the lessons that are meant to transform us. She was meant to feel that emptiness, to face the weight of her silence, to see what happens when emotional games meet emotional growth. Because now she's not dealing with the man she used to manipulate. She's facing the man who learned how to control his energy, and once a man masters his energy, he becomes untouchable. Her biggest punishment isn't losing you. It's realizing she'll never again experience the version of you that still believed in her. You see, what most men don't realize is that the moment you stop chasing, you stop existing in her world as an option and start existing as an idea. An idea she can't touch, can't control, can't fix. You become the embodiment of what if. What if she hadn't played hard to get? What if she'd been more vulnerable? What if she hadn't tested your patience? Those thoughts start to replay in her mind like background noise, quietly eating at her. And the more she tries to fill that void with new people, the more she realizes how irreplaceable emotional stability actually is. Other men might text her faster, flatter her more, but none of them make her feel the way your presence did, grounded, real, and unshakably calm. That's when she understands the hidden truth of modern attraction. The men who stop giving energy are the ones women never stop thinking about. Her friends will notice the shift before she admits it. They'll catch her bringing you up in casual conversations, defending you when no one attacks you, or asking mutual friends how you're doing. She'll brush it off, act nonchalant, but everyone can see through it. Because she's not talking about you to remember, she's talking about you to feel connected again. That's what regret looks like when it's still too proud to call itself regret. It's that restless energy that makes her want to reach out again, even after you've made it clear you've moved on. But by now, you've detached so deeply that her words don't hit the same. You're listening, but you're not absorbing. You're there, but you're not emotionally available anymore. You've outgrown the version of yourself that needed her, and that's what truly breaks her. She can't manipulate a man who doesn't crave validation anymore. Eventually, she'll realize that her silence cost her something far greater than a relationship. It cost her access. Access to your peace, your consistency, your emotional availability. And that's what stings the most. Because she thought leaving or staying silent would make her feel powerful, but instead, it made her powerless. Power, she learns too late, was never in control. It was in connection. She mistook detachment for dominance, and now she's learning that indifference has a price. Every time she sees you glowing, succeeding, or simply existing without her, it reminds her of what she'll never have again. You've transcended her emotionally, and she knows it. You're no longer in her emotional grasp, you're in her memory. And that's the kind of loss a woman never forgets, because it's not about missing you. It's about missing the version of herself that existed when you still cared. You, on the other hand, have learned something priceless. That true strength lies in restraint. You've learned that silence doesn't mean weakness. It's a form of clarity. You no longer text to prove a point or to get closure. Your peace is the closure. You've realized that emotional discipline is what separates boys from men and men from chaos. You've seen how quickly attraction fades when neediness enters the picture and how deeply it grows when mystery takes its place. You've learned that the one who can walk away with calmness always holds the power, because love without boundaries turns into dependency, and silence without resentment turns into freedom. You've evolved into the kind of man women desire but rarely deserve, one who can love deeply but never at the expense of his self-respect. So now, when she scrolls through her messages late at night, staring at your name, wondering how you managed to stop caring so effortlessly, she's not just missing you, she's missing the safety of knowing that no matter what she did, you'd still be there. That safety is gone now, and in its place stands something stronger, your peace. The version of you that used to overthink is now unbothered. The version that used to overgive is now selective. You've stopped chasing people who can't meet you emotionally, and that's why you've become magnetic without even trying. She won't admit it, but she feels it. That deep, aching pull toward a man who no longer needs her energy to feel whole. And that's the quiet, poetic justice of it all. The moment she finally finds the courage to reach out is the same moment you realize you don't need to reply. Over time, what started as curiosity inside her begins to turn into a quiet obsession. The emotional balance between you two has completely inverted. The same energy she once made you drown in is now consuming her. She'll check your profile multiple times a day, analyzing every detail: the time you were last active, who you follow, what you post, what songs or quotes you share. Every update becomes a clue, every silence a mystery. She starts constructing stories in her head to fill in the blanks, because your indifference gives her no answers, only questions. And human beings can handle pain, but not uncertainty. You've become that uncertainty, that quiet question that loops endlessly in her mind. What is he thinking? Does he miss me? Has he moved on? She doesn't realize that this loop is the same one she once trapped you in. The roles have reversed completely, and now she's the one replaying every memory, trying to find meaning in your silence. The funny thing about detachment is that it doesn't happen loudly. It doesn't require speeches or warnings. It happens slowly, quietly, through discipline, through all the times you chose not to react, not to defend, not to explain. That's how you built your strength. And now, every time she tries to reach for you emotionally, she feels that wall of calmness that wasn't there before. It confuses her because she still remembers the warmth in your tone, the passion in your words, the softness in your attention. But all of that is gone now. You've become still, almost unreachable. You're not angry, but you're not open either. You've reached that rare place where peace is more satisfying than validation. And that's something her ego can't compete with, because women know how to handle rejection, but they can't handle irrelevance. And that's what your silence has turned her into. Not an enemy, not an ex, but simply irrelevant in your new world. She'll start testing the waters again, but this time from a place of fear, not confidence. Maybe she comments on something you post. Maybe she finds an excuse to message you about something random. But the tone is different, hesitant, uncertain, almost fragile. Gone is the woman who once made you chase. What remains is someone trying to rebuild a bridge she burned, and you can feel it, that emotional shift in her words. The same person who once acted indifferent now sounds careful, almost anxious, because deep down she knows she's walking on thin ice. She doesn't want to admit she misses you, but she's desperate for connection. And you, grounded and composed, don't need to play games anymore. You see through it all, the subtle attempts, the indirect words, the half-hearted small talk. You don't respond with bitterness, but you also don't feed her illusions, because the man you've become doesn't crave what used to break him. And this is the part she never saw coming. Your peace now makes her anxious. Your calmness, which once irritated her when she wanted drama, now draws her in. She starts craving your energy again, not because she wants a relationship, but because your presence makes her feel grounded, something she hasn't felt since you left. Every other man she's encountered after you only amplified her confusion. They chased too hard, reacted too fast, or needed too much validation. None of them carried that quiet strength you now exude effortlessly. She realizes that what once bored her was actually balance, and what she thought was emotional excitement was just chaos, disguised as connection. The irony: you became everything she wished you were after she left. Not for her, but for yourself. And that realization cuts deeper than any silence ever could, because it shows her that she was the distraction, not the reason. As this realization sinks in, she begins to see herself from your perspective. All the moments she pushed, pulled, tested, and played games to feel powerful. She thought she was being clever, but now she sees it was just insecurity, wearing confidence as a disguise. You were patient, forgiving, consistent, and she mistook that for weakness. She thought you'd never stop caring. But what she never understood was that men don't stop caring overnight. They stop gradually, after they've cared too long without being valued. That's the part that destroys her, the slow, silent way you faded. Not with anger, but with acceptance. Because acceptance has no noise, no argument, no closure. It's the kind of ending that echoes, that leaves space for reflection. She'll finally understand that the real loss wasn't your love. It was your presence, your energy, your quiet strength that made her feel safe, even when she didn't deserve it. By now, she's in emotional debt. Every message she didn't send, every cold reply she once gave, every time she withheld affection to maintain control, they've all come back to collect. Because you can't manipulate peace, you can only regret losing it. She begins to crave the man who doesn't need her anymore. That paradox eats her alive. The same detachment that once scared her is now the very thing she finds irresistible. But it's too late because the man who used to wait is gone. He's not angry, he's just unreachable. You've turned silence into self-respect, distance into discipline, and heartbreak into wisdom. That's evolution. She may try to come back, but what she'll find isn't the same man she left. It's a mirror of her own mistakes. Because you didn't become better to win her back. You became better so that you'd never need someone like her again. The beauty of your silence is that it forces time to do the talking. Every day that passes without your attention deepens the void she created. She starts realizing that not all men are replaceable, that not all love can be replicated, and while she may still try to distract herself with others, deep down, she knows those connections are temporary fillers for something permanent she lost. Your detachment becomes her teacher, and your distance becomes her consequence. You don't need to punish her. Her own reflection does it for you, because every time she looks in the mirror, she sees the version of herself that pushed away a man who was solid, a man who never wanted to control her, only understand her. That's when she finally grasps the truth. You weren't the one who failed to love her properly. She was the one who failed to appreciate being loved, right? At some point, she'll try to rewrite the story to protect her ego. She'll tell people you changed, that you became distant, that you were emotionally unavailable. But deep down, she knows it's not true. What really happened is that you stopped overextending yourself. You stopped breaking your back to prove your worth to someone who couldn't recognize it. And the more she tries to paint you as detached, the more it exposes her own guilt. Because people can feel when a story doesn't add up. They'll see through her defensiveness, the same way you once did. And nothing haunts a woman more than realizing the man she disrespected became the one everyone else admires. You're not the villain in her story anymore, you're the lesson. And that right there is the kind of victory that doesn't need an audience, because peace doesn't perform, it radiates. Eventually, she'll reach the stage of acceptance, but not the kind that brings relief. It's the kind that tastes bitter, the kind that wakes her up at 2 a.m. thinking about you. It's the acceptance that comes when she finally realizes she can't undo what's been done. You're gone, not in distance, but in essence. The version of you that once needed her validation no longer exists. She'll look at your calm, composed demeanor and feel like she's standing in front of a stranger, someone familiar, but foreign. And that's what hurts her the most. You've become untouchable, not because you hate her, but because you've outgrown her. She was once the storm in your life, but now you're the calm after it. And no matter how much she wants to re-enter that peace, she can't, because she's the reason you built it. And so in the end, when she lies in bed staring at the ceiling, her phone beside her, wondering why she can't move on, she'll finally understand what it all meant. You weren't silent to punish her, you were silent to protect your soul. You weren't distant to make her chase, you were distant to reclaim your peace. What she thought was indifference was actually freedom. What she mistook for weakness was actually strength. And while she'll try to forget you, she won't succeed. Because a man who walks away with calmness leaves a mark that chaos can't erase. You became the one that got away, not because you disappeared, but because you evolved. You didn't win by proving her wrong. You won by outgrowing the version of yourself that ever needed to. And that's the final truth. When a man learns to find power in silence, no woman, no heartbreak, and no rejection can ever break him again. As weeks fade into months, the silence between you two transforms into something far more profound. It becomes a mirror, not just for her, but for you too. For her, it's a reflection of what she lost by taking something real for granted. For you, it's a reflection of what you gained by finally mastering your own emotions. There's a certain beauty in realizing that peace doesn't come from being understood, but from no longer needing to explain yourself. You've stopped needing closure from her, because your actions became the closure. You no longer ask, why did she do this? Or was it my fault? You've replaced those questions with acceptance. She, on the other hand, is still trapped in the endless cycle of what ifs. What if she hadn't pulled away? What if she'd been kinder? What if she'd seen your value before losing it? And those questions, they don't fade with time, they multiply. Because the deeper she reflects, the more she realizes that you didn't change. You simply woke up. By now, your silence has evolved from discomfort to power. It's not the cold kind of silence born from bitterness. It's the serene kind that radiates stability. It's the kind of energy that speaks louder than any argument ever could. You've learned that words lose meaning when actions speak for you. Every day you stay calm. Every time you choose not to engage, every moment you refuse to be baited into emotional chaos, you reaffirm your dominance not over her, but over yourself. And that's the difference. True masculine strength isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering your inner world. While she's still reacting, guessing, and feeling, you're living, creating, and becoming. You've turned what she thought would break you into the very thing that built you. And that energy, that peace, is what she feels every time she thinks of you. Because even in your absence, your discipline has a presence. She starts to realize something that frightens her, that no matter what she does, she can't reach you emotionally anymore. She can text, she can flirt, she can even apologize, but she can't shake you. There's a wall now, not built from anger, but from wisdom. You no longer give energy freely, you invest it wisely, and she feels that difference instantly. You used to text back within minutes, now you take your time. You used to reassure her, now you let silence speak. You used to crave her approval, now you value your solitude. She can sense that emotional shift, and it terrifies her, because she knows it's not a game, it's transformation. You're no longer the man she could manipulate emotionally, you're the man she now has to respect from a distance. And respect for women who once relied on control is far more painful than rejection, because it means you've risen above their reach. Meanwhile, you've stepped into a new version of yourself, a man who no longer equates love with effort, who no longer confuses attention with connection. You've learned that chasing peace is far more rewarding than chasing people. The emptiness you once felt has turned into space for purpose. You've started focusing on your craft, your body, your goals. You've stopped measuring your worth by how much someone else wants you, and started defining it by how well you can stand alone. And in doing so, you've become something she never expected, unbothered. That's the one thing she can't compete with, because in a world where everyone's desperate for attention, the man who values silence becomes magnetic. You're not bitter, you're balanced. You're not avoiding women, you're just done being distracted. And that quiet certainty, that's what makes you untouchable. Now her thoughts start to haunt her in waves. It's not that she misses you, it's that she misses the way you made her feel about herself. Your validation used to be her emotional mirror. It reminded her she was special, desirable, seen. But when you took that mirror away, she was forced to look at herself without reflection, and what she saw scared her. She realized how much of her confidence came from external attention, not internal peace. You weren't just a man to her, you were emotional stability disguised as a lover. You made her feel safe in a world that thrives on superficial validation. And when you walked away, she didn't just lose you, she lost her sense of worth. That's the power of your absence. You didn't just disappear from her life, you dismantled her illusion of control. In the quiet moments, late at night, when her makeup's off and her phone's face down, that's when reality hits her hardest. The world she built on distractions and attention feels hollow. The people she surrounded herself with don't fill the void, they amplify it. Because nothing compares to genuine connection once you've tasted it. And deep down, she knows she didn't lose a man who needed her. She lost a man who understood her. That realization stings, because women rarely meet men who see beyond the surface, who care without possession, who love without dependency. You were that rarity, and she traded it for emotional safety that doesn't exist. That's when she starts realizing the cruel truth. Sometimes losing a good man doesn't just hurt, it reshapes a woman's soul. But here's where your story becomes beautiful. While she's busy mourning what she lost, you're quietly building what she could never give you. You're no longer reacting to life, you're responding to it. You've become measured, patient, and intuitive. You've realized that detachment doesn't mean you don't feel, it means you don't cling. You've stopped chasing the temporary and started building the eternal. And that shift, though subtle, is powerful enough to change everything. You're no longer bound by the emotional roller coaster of validation. You've stepped into stillness, and that's where real strength lives. The kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud, the kind that doesn't need to prove. You've become grounded in your own energy, and because of that, the world, including her, can feel it. She'll try to move on, but the truth is, you'll linger, not as a ghost, but as a benchmark. Every man after you will be measured against your calm. She'll look for your steadiness in someone else's chaos, your patience in someone else's pride. and she'll never find it, because peace can't be faked, it can only be cultivated. You didn't pretend to be calm, you became it. You didn't act detached, you learned to let go. And that's why she'll always feel that quiet ache when she thinks of you. Not because you hurt her, but because you healed from her in silence. And that's a form of strength most people never reach, the ability to love, lose, and still remain whole. You've turned pain into wisdom, heartbreak into clarity, and her silence into your sanctuary. As months pass, something inside you begins to shift again, but this time, it's softer. You stop thinking about her entirely, not because you forced yourself to forget, but because you genuinely outgrew the version of you that needed to remember. You've accepted the lessons she came to teach, the danger of overgiving, the importance of self-worth, the beauty of emotional discipline. You look back, not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because without her chaos, you wouldn't have found your calm. Without her distance, you wouldn't have found your strength. And that's what true healing feels like. Peace that doesn't depend on amnesia, but on understanding. You no longer see her as the one who hurt you. You see her as the one who helped you find yourself. And that's where the story ends. Not with revenge, not with regret, but with resurrection. You've become the kind of man who doesn't chase closure because he is closure. You've learned that not every love story is meant to be rekindled. Some are meant to awaken. You've discovered that silence is not emptiness. It's presence in its purest form. The woman who once made you question your worth has now become the proof of it. She'll carry your memory like an unfinished sentence, something she'll revisit in quiet moments, wondering how she lost what she didn't know how to keep. And you'll move forward quietly, confidently, without needing anyone to understand. Because once a man learns that peace is more valuable than attention, no woman can ever control him again. Your silence, your restraint, your calm, that's not distance anymore, that's freedom.